Welcome back to the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn Tierney from the Automation Blog and School. And this week on the show, I meet up with Cindy Hollenbeck from SoftPLC to learn all about their migration options for legacy Allen-Bradley PLCs. Cindy, thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast. It's great to have you on. Now, before we jump into your presentation here on SoftPLC and your solutions, could you take a moment just to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I actually, out of college, went to work for Allen-Bradley as a product manager, and I was responsible for releasing the PLC2 second series of products. And I met my husband there, and we got transferred down to Houston and started our company a couple years later. And we've been in the factory automation business ever since. And so I wanted to talk today about what we can do for Allen-Bradley customers with older equipment specifically. So SoftPLC as a corporation, we have a number of automation products. We have our SoftPLC controllers, we have I/O, we have protocol converters, we do HMIs and SCADA systems. And we also actually still offer old programming software for Allen-Bradley PLCs that have been obsoleted. And we also have some cloud-based remote data acquisition products. But today, like I said, what I want to talk about specifically is our SoftPLC programmable automation controllers. And we have a number of different models that are shown for those of you that are watching. But first, I want to talk about the name SoftPLC because it's often misinterpreted. You think of a word like Kleenex, it's a trademark for tissues. Well, SoftPLC is our trademark for our technology, which is a unique thing. So SoftPLCs, the way we phrase it, are not PC-based control software. They run on embedded Linux. They're not a Windows product. The computer doesn't have a screen. It's going to run in a box that looks a lot like a PLC. It is deterministic scan. You can do run mode programming. You troubleshoot it just like a PLC. But because of the underlying technology, it is a programmable automation controller, and it has a lot of advanced features that are computer-like, such as data logging, email, web servers, a whole lot of communications, a lot of protocols. And it is a truly open architecture product in that people can add value to it, and it can be embedded onto different hardware platforms. So we like to think of our particular implementation of SoftPLC as an Allen-Bradley PLC on steroids, because it is modeled after an Allen-Bradley PLC. From our background in working with Allen-Bradley PLCs and doing programming software for them, we actually can take an existing program and import it and run it. So we've kept that model because of a number of reasons. One is over 60% of the installed base of PLCs in the Americas is Allen-Bradley. And we are able to provide Allen-Bradley PLC users an easy and affordable upgrade path to modern technology. And we also, with the same technology, can provide a gateway from Allen-Bradley PLCs or Allen-Bradley PACs to other vendors' equipment or to the cloud. So the company actually started in 1983. We were called Teledenken back then. And in the 80s, we developed Allen-Bradley programming software called TopDoc. And one of the features of TopDoc was something called SoftWires, which was a simulation emulation program, so you could test the logic. And in 1988, as industrial computers became more powerful, more rugged, we took the SoftWires product and repackaged it with a real-time operating system, and we actually launched the first SoftPLC. So we were one of the first people that participated in the PC-based control arena. And by 1993, that was going so well that we decided to rename the company SoftPLC Corporation and focus strictly on that technology. And then over time, what we found was we needed to provide the hardware side of it because customers didn't want to build their own PLCs. They wanted to buy PLCs. So we launched an I/O line that we call TealWare. In 2001, we converted to Linux instead of the other operating system we'd been using because it provided us a platform that other people were maintaining. And as new technology came out, we could embed that technology without us having to do it all ourselves. So that is what we're using today, is an embedded version of Linux, real-time Linux. And then in 2008, we launched our first controller that we designed the computer. And the reason we did that is we wanted to have a product that had the long lifespan that PLC users expect. A lot of industrial computers they're good for 18 months, 2 years, and then the model's discontinued. And we wanted to be able to have a platform that we could provide our customers with a 5 to 10 year lifespan. And so our first entry into that was what we call our Smart SoftPLC. And then in 2019, we launched our NeoPack. And then in 2022, we launched another model called the MLX. But what happened in the 2010, 2011 timeframe was the patents on the Allen-Bradley Blue Hose protocols expired. So that's the remote IO protocol that was used, and also Data Highway Plus. And so although we already had known those technologies, we weren't able to sell them. But when the patents ran out, we were able to build those interfaces into our controllers. So all of our models that we are going to talk about today have an internal Allen-Bradley Blue Hose interface that allows us to talk on those networks. So all soft PLCs are the same. It's the same firmware. It's just the hardware that's different. And so these are just some of the universal specifications. The instruction set is a ladder logic. It programs like a PLC 5 or a SLC 500. It's a superset of that set of instructions. We have our own unique instructions that we add to that, but this is how we can literally take an existing program and import it and run it without change. So there's really no limit to the size of the programs, and all of the documentation for the programs is in the SoftPLC controller. So you don't have to worry about those files being kept separately. Everything's one file image. The data table, again, there's no limit. You can have 100 million words of data table if you want, so you can go crazy. Nice. We actually have some customers that have 100,000 rungs of ladder logic running in a program. The addressing is similar. Again, the data table structure is similar to a PLC 5 or a SLC 500. And then we can load up to 16 different I/O drivers. And so you could have a mix of Ethernet I/O and Allen-Bradley remote I/O and some serial I/O. Or you could talk to Modbus as well as Ethernet IP at the same time. The SoftPLC will appear on a network as an Allen-Bradley PLC 5. So like if you take RS Links and you say, you know, what's out there, the SoftPLC will look like a PLC 580 Ethernet processor. Additionally, we can appear on a Modbus network as a Modbus device or a Modbus TCP device, or on Ethernet IP as a I/O device.
Now, Cindy, let me ask you a question. I was just thinking this was like, all right, you can't get an old PLC, we can replace it with the soft PLC. But now, just looking at this slide, I'm thinking, have you had anybody who said, look, the 580 isn't big enough, I need to go bigger, who's implemented your product?
Yes, we've done that several times. Like I said, we've got one customer with 100,000 rungs. We did another application where we took a PLC 3 and 2 PLC 5s and combined all that logic into one processor. And then we've just done some PLC 5 retrofits where the PLC 5 was full and they needed more room for mainly data table.
That's awesome. Now, what are you finding for scan times? Are we faster than the old PLCs with the soft PLC?
Yes. So one of our customers, they have about 10,000 rungs of logic, a lot of PID and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And on a fairly slow computer, like an ARM computer, that's running at about 10 milliseconds.
That's good.
For 10,000 rungs. So it's crazy fast. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was some of our different models. The models I'm going to talk about now are all ARM-based CPUs. This keeps the cost down. We can run on Intel processors. They just tend to be higher cost. But the Smart SoftPLC is what I call our workhorse. It has 512 meg of RAM, 8 gigabytes of flash, and 11 communication ports. So it has a built-in Ethernet switch, which can also act as a router because there's several MAC ID interfaces. There's also another standalone gigabaud Ethernet port. It has some serial ports, USB ports, and then it has 3 what we call option ports. And these can be configured at the factory for either Allen-Bradley Remote I/O or Data Highway Plus, or serial protocols like RS-485. And then the customer can customize those ports to whatever protocols they want through software. The other thing with the Smart is the base model has just a flat cover, and it can be used for Ethernet or serial I/O or Allen-Bradley I/O. But we also have some optional front interfaces that are hardware options that will allow it to connect to our I/O modules. So one is what we call our backplane 3, which will put on 3 modules directly onto the CPU, and we can do a small, like a lift station or a small application, a small packaging machine. The other interface we call our local ports, and it allows us to connect to up to 12 local I/O racks. And so we can do very high speed local I/O to a lot of modules. Then the NeoPack is kind of our newer, smaller option. It's the same memory specs as the Smart, but it's smaller and it has less ports. It only has 1 Ethernet port, 2 USB ports, and then it has 2 option ports, which again can be Allen-Bradley Blue Hose or RS-485. And the last one I want to talk about, this one doesn't have the Blue Hose capability, but it's our micro. And we came up with this solution specifically to address the micrologics delivery issues and conversions of micrologics. The CPU itself is about 2 by 2 by 1 inches. It's very small. It has an Ethernet port and a couple USB ports, and it can connect to Ethernet I/O or serial I/O, but we also have an I/O block that has a very similar mix to the micrologics, so that if we were doing a conversion, it fits in the same size rack space as the micrologics 1400 and has a similar I/O mix, and then we can import the program and convert it. And so it's a nice option for people who are looking to for an alternative to the micrologics. So those are the models I want to talk about, and then I want to get into more specifics about the actual migration process. So why would you want to upgrade just the CPU? Well, a lot of times the machine is fine, the I/O is fine, but the PLC CPU spares are getting harder to get. The programming software is not available, or the last time I heard, if you want PLC 5 RS Logics, it's like $13,000 or something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Or maybe you have a PLC 5 and you need to talk Ethernet and you can't add it. The coprocessor or the sidecar modules are obsolete. You can't get a 580E. So that would be a good reason. Maybe we talked about this earlier. Maybe you don't have any capacity to expand.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're getting in some new equipment to add to the system and you can't communicate to it. And sometimes people are just seeking an alternative controls vendor because the cost of support, or maybe the company's looking for a change. So we can talk about those reasons.
There's a lot of these facilities that just have storerooms full of 1771 I/O. It lasts forever. The chassis, the power supplies, they just last forever. So if you're like, I got to do an upgrade on this machine, but I can't buy more copies of the software because it's way too expensive. I can't buy, the PLCs themselves are hard to find. Like you said, you can't get one with Ethernet. I wanted to upgrade to Ethernet. All these things. I mean, it's like, well, soft PLC is an option because I can just replace the existing controller with the soft PLC. And I know you're going to go through this in a minute, but I can definitely see somebody who's not ready to rip everything out of their plant and go all brand new, who's struggling with the cost of the software and the cost of the controllers, and even if they can even get them, I could definitely see that being a good option.
Yep. And so, customers have to say, do I want to just do this CPU replacement, or do I want to go ahead and replace all the controls? Well, like you said, they've got a lot of I/O. I/O is usually easy to get. Plus, you have to wire it. So anytime you change the I/O, you're going to have to rewire. And even with the Rockwell conversion of the old 1771 I/O to the ControlLogix I/O, that's expensive, and not all the modules convert. And maybe you don't need to do that part of the upgrade at this time. We're talking to one steel plant that they have a PLC 5 that feeds the rest of the lines, the machines, and the cost to replace that PLC 5 was not only hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it was 6 months of downtime. And they're like, I can't do that.
Yeah,
I can't shut this machine down. And so a lot of times the partial upgrade is a much better solution for people. Additionally, it's not a capital project, it's a maintenance budget project. So what we offer, we like to call it the smoothest, lowest cost migration of Allen-Bradley's PLC CPUs. We can import and or convert the logic and the documentation, so there's no re-engineering. You can keep the existing I/O and your wiring if you want to. If you don't want to, you can change it, because we can talk to other types of I/O. Or you could do a mixture. Let's say you needed to add a rack. That new rack could be something modern, but the old racks could stay the same. And the same thing's true of the networks. If the PLC 5 was talking on Data Highway Plus to some SLC 504s, you can keep that and just change the PLC 5. If you want to go Ethernet, you can. Let's say you have HMIs. The old HMI is going to see the soft PLC as the old Allen-Bradley controller, whether it's a SLC or a PLC 5, and you don't need to change the HMI. But if you want to, we've got Ethernet. You can take the new HMI, talk to the soft PLC on Ethernet. So you choose what pieces you want to change, but the CPU alone is certainly an option. So the Smart Soft PLC can have 3 Bluehost ports. The NeoPack can have 2. So if you've got to talk data highway and remote I/O, we can do that. If you've got multiple remote I/O networks, we can do that. If we need to act as a remote I/O scanner and a master at the same time, that's possible. So you can just mix and match and choose the connection points that you want. So what can we upgrade? PLC 5 or Soft Logic 5, SLC 500, MicroLogix, PLC 2, and we've even done some of the old 1774 black boxes that most people have probably never seen, where there's some automotive plants that still had some of those running a couple of years ago. PLC 3 and PLC 5 or PLC 5250, the pyramid integrator, are all possibles. The I/O and networks that we can connect to, all the different types of remote I/O, 1771, which is the PLC 5 I/O, PLC 2 I/O, 1747, which is the SLC I/O, Flex I/O, Block I/O, anything that's on remote I/O can be brought into the soft PLC. So if you've got a scale, or you've got a drive, or you've got an HMI on that remote I/O network, it all can talk to the soft PLC without having to change anything. Data Highway Plus, obviously we can hang on that. And then on Ethernet, we can talk Allen-Bradley TCP, which is the original PLC 5 SLC 500 Ethernet, Ethernet IP, Modbus TCP, or we can talk serial DF1, Modbus, ASCII, all those different protocols. So what's the process? So let's talk about the hardware first. If you're keeping the I/O, The only thing we need to do is change any local I/O to remote I/O, which means like in a PLC 5, you take the processor out and you put in a 1771 ASB. If it's a SLC 500, you take the processor out and you put in a 1747 ASB. We stock those and we include those as part of the conversion kits that we quote. We make sure that they work and we warranty them. So even though those are obsolete adapters, we are making it easy for the customer to get those. I will say they are gently used. We buy them off of the resale market, but we do warranty them. If you want to change some of the I/O, then we might need to do some adjustments because of the differences in I/O. For example, if you're going to change some remote analog I/O, you used to have to block transfer to it. If you're using some other vendor's I/O on Ethernet, then you need to change the program to get rid of the block transfers. Maybe the speed is different and you need to adjust some things. So those kind of things happen, but if you're just keeping the existing I/O, it's pretty simple. Same thing with communication network. You know, what are we going to do? What about the peripherals? Are we going to change the HMI or not? All those may require some conversations, but in general, everything goes pretty smoothly. Once we talked about the hardware, then we look at the software part of it, the logic, and we offer this as a service. Our conversion utilities, we didn't take the time to make them pretty. So we have customers email us their files from Aris Logix, and we run them through our conversion. We install the new converted program in the CPU and ship it that way after we make sure that it runs without fault. A lot of times customers don't have the software, so they will scan the printout and send it to us and we'll type it in for them, and then we'll run the conversion. Gotten pretty good at doing PLC2 program entry.
Well, I can see why twos a lot of them don't have them. The tapes are dead. Yeah.
Or a lot of times the OEM didn't provide the files to customers.
Yeah.
So the conversion utility spits out a report that tells the customer what it did. Like, this address became this address. Mm-hmm. Like in the case of a PLC2, maybe there was some BCD math. Mm-hmm. Well, we tell in our report, this is what we did because you probably don't want BCD math anymore.
Yes, we don't want it.
Yes. Or maybe in the case of like a MicroLogix or any of them, actually, there may be some potential issues of instructions that didn't convert. For example, immediate I/O. That's a hardware function of the Allen-Bradley PLC that we can't provide. And so that would be flagged, and then we would discuss whether it matters or not. A lot of times it doesn't, but sometimes maybe we have to address that with adding a local I/O module or something like that.
For those who don't know, you can have an I/O input, for instance, trigger a subroutine, and it's very rare though, but they're out there.
Yep. You never know what you're going to run into. We actually ran into one where the OEM was using undocumented PID bits in the PLC5 block. And so we had to change our PID instruction to support that function.
Oh, all right.
To get that working for the customer. And that's the kind of thing that we do. We make sure it works. So in the case of a PLC5, it's actually an import because we are a PLC5 clone. In the case of the PLC2 or the SLC 500, the MicroLogix, we do a conversion, and typically 95% or better will convert. When we talk about PLC 5250, PLC3, it's usually going to be 85% or better conversion, but there may be some things that need manual engineering. For example, the PLC3 had a peer-to-peer function that's different than the messaging function. That doesn't convert, so it has to be addressed. We also can convert control or compact logics back to SoftPLC. Why would you want to do that? We've had people actually want to do that because of delivery issues or maybe cost issues. And then the other thing we can do is other brands. So Schneider, Siemens, Fanuc programs can be converted to run in SoftPLC. And we may or may not be able to keep the I/O in those cases. It depends on how old it is and what networks it supported. So we've actually done conversions like from Siemens S7 and talked to their I/O without changing it.
Oh,
But our specialty is Allen-Bradley. So I want to talk about a couple examples just to show you what we can do. This particular customer had a couple of 525s, which are fairly old PLC 5s. The cost of the new hardware, was a CPU only upgrade, was $1,950 per system. And in this case, the customer didn't have any software or backup files. So the integrator went on site, uploaded the logic with his copy of Ars Logix, emailed it to us. We converted it, and we had to manually enter the documentation so that it would be part of the conversion. And the only issue that we had during that startup was that the actual machine timing was dependent on the PLC scan time being what it was, and we were much faster.
Oh.
So we had to add a delay, add some logic to delay system so it would run properly.
For the audio only audience, what we're looking at here is a rack with looks like two 16-slot racks, 1771. And the SoftPLC controller is mounted right to the panel on the top, and one wire, and the blue hose goes to the two remote racks, and you're done. I did want to explain the documentation entered from the printout. If for all you people who are used to using the modern, Studio 5000, back in the day, comments did not go into the controller. So even with the original ControlLogix, comments did not go into the controller. So yeah, if you don't have the original program, you're not going to have any documentations. Even if you upload from the PLC, you don't get any of your comments. So I just wanted to throw out there. So
I guess I forget people don't realize that.
I mean, it really, you think about it, Studio 5000, we haven't, it's been many revs since it's included the documentation. So, but I wanted to throw that out there. And back to you, Cindy.
Okay. This slide is just a thing just to show that the logic, it's a different editor that you use, but the logic looks the same. And those of you that aren't watching obviously can't see that, but there's really not a learning curve when you move to SoftPLC because it's a clone. So, I mean, we actually had one integrator put a project in a water treatment plant, and we got a phone call months later from a really irate guy. He's like, I need to know what this is, and I want it ripped out because we're an Allen-Bradley shop. And I was like, well, okay, slow down. And found out who he was and who put the system in. And I talked to the integrator, and they had gotten permission from the engineer to use SoftPLC, but not from the maintenance guys didn't buy in. And so they didn't realize it. But once they were shown that it looks the same and you could troubleshoot it the same, they were happy. It was kind of a interesting story there. This is another example of a PLC 5 upgrade. This was one of the first ones we did back. Was installed in 1999. It was a milk plant in Tasmania. There had a 580E that was full, and they wanted to add a bunch of Profibus valves and some other equipment. The system had 7 racks of SLC 500 I/O on it and 8 SCADA nodes. And then they were talking Data Highway Plus to 9 other PLC 5s and SLC 504s. And that program imported without change. The integrator added the logic for the new equipment, and it has been running, like I said, since 1999. Wow. They did upgrade the CPU and added some more Profibus stuff. I think it was like 2005, but that was mainly because of they wanted a faster CPU.
Sure.
Talk about SLC 500 upgrades. The first example is a complete retrofit. It was a small lift station. It was a 503 connected by radios. And they wanted to get rid of the radios and go to self communications. So we will put in a SoftPLC and replace the I/O. For those of you that are looking at it, you can see that it was just 3 modules that were mounted right on the front of the CPU. And that program converted 100%, and then we just used an external cell modem. So that was a real simple job. Another example was a 504. It had 1 local and 2 remote racks. So we replaced the SLIC 504 with a remote I/O adapter. And then the conversion, the only changes we needed to do was to add the block transfers for the analog modules that were in the local rack. So that one we didn't change the I/O on. Here's a couple of PLC2 examples. It's funny, you know, we still sell a lot of PLC2 programming software. It's amazing that they were obsoleted in 1993, but there's still so many of them out there running.
Oh yeah.
So the first example here I'm talking about is it was a mini PLC2 which fits in the rack, and it had a single 16 slot rack. The customer didn't have the program, so they used our TopDoc PLC2 to upload the program, and then they sent us the printout, and we entered the documentation. And the cost of the new hardware and the conversion and the services to enter the documentation was $2,500.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is affordable.
That is so affordable. You can't even buy a new controller for that price.
Exactly.
I mean, and this
exactly.
was wow, amazing.
Another example that I like to talk about is just because the integrator was allowed 1 hour to change over this PLC 230. It had 12 I/O racks. So they weren't touching the I/O. All they wanted to do was upgrade the processor. They sent us the program. It converted 100% because it was all digital. It was a pretty simple program. And they did a test bed to check it out, you know, before they showed up on site. But they were up and running in a half hour. So we run into some weird stuff sometimes, like maybe the old Allen-Bradley PLC has a basic module or a coprocessor. SoftPLC has the ability to run C or C++ code. There's a toolkit that allows you to create the routines so that it runs in our environment. And so one example is we did a sausage machine, and they had a basic module doing a bunch of advanced math.
All right.
And so that basic code was converted to C and ran inline in the SoftPLC. Another example was a PLC 5 that had a bunch of drives that were connected to a coprocessor, and the code in the coprocessor was implementing a serial protocol to talk to the drives. And so again, we actually went on the internet and found a basic to C conversion utility and converted the code and tweaked it a little bit, and they were up and running in less than a day on that installation. There was, I think there was like 12 drives. We also run into where maybe there was a Modbus module in a SLIC 500 or a modem module or some of the other protocol like ProSoft modules to convert to some other protocol. A lot of times we have those drivers native. Other times we can do it through these loadable functions that we have. And the other thing we run into is, like in the SLIC 500, there were some third-party modules like a barrel temperature module or something, a strain gauge module. A lot of times those vendors that made those modules for Allen-Bradley have the same product as a standalone module that you could interface to either serially or over Ethernet. Other times that same function can be achieved a different way, either through software or just some advanced functions. Sometimes we have to add a local TLware module. So for example, we were doing one application that had a bunch of TTL modules that were in a local rack and they needed to be high speed. And so what we did is we used our TLware TTL module on the processor, left the rest of the Allen-Bradley I/O in place. So there's other ways to do it. There's other vendor products that you can interface to achieve what you need to achieve. We had one OEM that did sawmill related machines, and they needed really high speed analog I/O. And so we used a card that fits inside the computer. In that case, I think back then it was a PCI card, and wrote a driver for it. And so the rest of the I/O was Allen-Bradley 1771 I/O, but for those analog points, we used this PC card. So there's a lot of ways to achieve things when it's not just standard, simple PLC stuff. I kind of skipped over this earlier, but we do still sell our top dock for Allen-Bradley PLC2, PLC5, and PLC3. So if you have an old Allen-Bradley processor and you don't have software, we do have that available for a reasonable price, and it will run on modern, Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11 computers. And customers who purchase one of our Allen-Bradley Top Dock products receive a coupon for a free SoftPLC controller and the programming software for it. So the first upgrade you do is simply the cost of the conversion service and any I/O adapters that you need to put in place of the processor. So I'm going to change gears here. The SoftPLC controller is what we sell, but we market it also as a protocol converter because it has all of these communications in it, and because a lot of times customers, if it's a controller, it has to be an Allen-Bradley. We found that positioning the product as a protocol converter is more amenable to a lot of customers. So when you think about a protocol converter, it has protocol 1 converts to protocol 2. Well, SoftPLC does that, but it allows up to 16 protocols that are user configurable. It also runs logic. So if you need to massage the data, concentrate the data, maybe you want to log the data to a CSV file, maybe you want to have a web page that allows you to see what's going on. All of those functions are in the SoftPLC, and so they're therefore in our protocol converters. And so some examples of how we can fit into these more advanced protocol converters. Let's say you have a control Logix or a compact Logix, and you want to talk to a Modbus device or a Modbus TCP device. So we can use one of our little micros and do that quite easily. Another example that I'm showing here on the screen was an automotive plant, and they needed to add safety equipment, and they liked Siemens safety product better than the Allen-Bradley safety product. They couldn't change the 580. That was not part of the project. So we talked to the Siemens safety PLCs on Modbus TCP. There was also a Mitsubishi PLC and an HMI that we needed to bring in. But then they had this press controller that we talked serial Modbus to. But there were 5 values from this press controller that had to get to the PLC 580 quickly every scan. And so we worked with the press controller vendor and developed a second serial high-speed protocol that was on a separate port for those 5 words. And so this one little gateway was doing 5 different protocols and was kind of the hub of this whole addition to the system. What's ironic is it would have been a whole lot easier to just have the SoftPLC replace that PLC5, but that wasn't part of the project. So another thing that we've been doing a lot of lately is when the customer has a DCS system, a process control system that's using Allen-Bradley remote I/O, the SoftPLC acts as a scanner for the remote I/O and talks to the new process control system. So we've done this with Emerson, we've done it with Quantum, we've done it with Siemens, ABB, different process control systems where they don't want to replace the remote I/O. And so I want to talk about one more example of a phased upgrade. So this customer had a panel mate, and it was connected Data Highway Plus to a SLC 504. And so the first phase was they wanted to replace the HMI. The SLC 500 required no changes. We put in the SoftPLC gateway on Ethernet to the HMI, and then Data Highway Plus to the SLC 500. And in this case, the customer selected a SoftPLC HMI, and we actually have a panel mate application conversion. So we were able to convert the HMI application, add the gateway, and not have to touch the SLC 500 at all. And then phase 2 was to replace the SLC 500. And so we used the exact same hardware that was the gateway, but we connected a Tealware I/O rack in place of the SLC 500 I/O modules. So why would somebody want to upgrade to SoftPLC versus Rockwell? Well, first of all, it's smoother. The PLC5 SLC 500 to logic conversion manual from Rockwell is 80 pages. Most of the talks about conversion issues, things that don't convert well. The list of potential things that don't convert from PLC5 to SoftPLC is less than 1 page. And those are mostly seldom used functions. Another reason is the new system is going to be very similar. I talked about this earlier. Maintenance people aren't going to need training. The logic and the addressing is the same. And there's less risk of problems due to the conversion because it's an import. When you talk about going into a control logic system or a compact logic system, a lot of the add-on things that might have existed back in the PLC5 days aren't available for control logic. So you're going to be doing those functions a different way, which again adds to conversion issues, re-engineering, and a lot of cost. And again, you get a lot of advanced features with the SoftPLC. You're not paying extra for Ethernet. The Smart has a built-in switch. There's not a limit of memory. There's not a limit of speed. You've got a whole lot of functions that are standard that you don't have to pay for. If you want to send email messages, you want to do data logging, you want to interface to a SQL database, you want to talk Modbus. All these things are very inexpensive because, well, they're included, so they're really inexpensive. The hardware cost of a SoftPLC system versus Rockwell is night and day. Those of you that are online, you can see the chart here. A NeoPack SoftPLC with the Allen-Bradley interface starts at $1,500. Typically, a PLC5 upgrade with a Smart SoftPLC is going to be less than a third of the Control Logic's upgrade cost. So you're looking at 10 to 25%. The SoftPLC solution is the same for all size applications. We don't really have a processor that can't handle a small application or a big application. You can use the same product for a range of different applications. And all the SoftPLC controllers use the same software. When you buy a SoftPLC the first time, you get one license for the software. There are no levels of licenses. You get all the features. It comes, there's one catalog number. And that product, we're actually going to be building it to run in our controllers in the future so that every SoftPLC that's shipped will have software in it for programming. And the other main reason is freedom. We're an open architecture product. We're vendor neutral. We don't sell drives. We don't sell sensors. We don't care what you connect to. We don't sell vision systems. We are able to interface to products from all different vendors. You're going to reduce your automation costs long term, both in hardware and software support. And we have product in stock. We had stock all during the shortage. We made sure whatever it took to make sure that we could ship our product. And then I've got a quote on the screen from one of our customers that speaks to our support and our service. I can't remember a time in the last 20 years that a vendor went to the lengths that SoftPLC Corporation did to ensure our projects were a success. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's excellent. There's so much we didn't even touch there, but I think this is a great introduction to the audience and what you guys are doing. And I definitely think there's situations where, especially when you can't get the processors and you get so much installed base that it makes sense to go this route, and even just use it as a gateway, or when you run out of memory. It's pretty amazing what you guys have done. I mean, the logo, you just like, I can remember seeing it all through the 90s. And of course, Top Doc was one of those packages out there in the early 90s that everybody was talking about, the program PLC. So just great to catch up with you, Cindy, and learn about your new products. And love to have you on the show when anything new comes up in the future. But with that, was there anything else you wanted to add before we close out the show?
No, I decided I wanted to focus on the migrations today, and but we do, we have great products for new applications, and the gateways are extremely popular. We actually are partnered with Siemens. You did a podcast with Siemens about the SoftPLC drive gateway. So we do some other things. We invite you to visit our website and check out all the different things we do.
Yeah, it's softplc.com. It's easy to remember. And if you remember back to the using Siemens VFDs with Allen-Bradley PLCs, one of those slides had a soft PLC in there as the gateway. So I do remember that. Well, Cindy, thank you again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Shawn.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I want to thank Cindy for taking time out of her busy schedule to come on the show and tell us all about soft PLC migration options for legacy Allen-Bradley PLCs. I thought it was very interesting. With that said, if you did enjoy this episode, please consider giving us a like, a sub, and sharing the show. And if you're on the audio side, please consider giving us a 5-star review. It really helps us grow our audience and find new vendors to come on the show. And I want to say a sincere thanks to all of you who have already done so. Really appreciate that. And if you guys want to get in touch with me or you want to follow me, you can do so over at automation.locals.com. And of course, you'll find all of my training courses over at theautomationschool.com. With that, I want to wish you all a courageous, fearless, and awesome week. And until next time, my friends, peace.